So you got this.
We got this. Woo!
And I was determined to prove that coffee was bad. I'm laughing as a trauma response. Whatever the Lord says in the moment, just be obedient and don't think about it. Just constantly forgive, forgive, forgive. So then when a violation comes along, you have nothing to defend yourself against. You're just, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Being reverent was folding your arms and bowing your head and closing your eyes. And this is a very submissive position. You know, it's not a power pose. Like, sure. This is like a power pose or this, or, you know, I'm like rushing around in here trying to get the lights, camera, action. I'm like, I hate this. What am I doing? And then I'm like, hi guys, how are you?
Yay, hi. Welcome to this Apostate Sisters interview series. I'm Patty, and in this space, I sit down with the courageous people who've walked away from high control environments, whether it be religious, institutional, or ideological. Together, we explore their stories of deconstruction, discuss personal autonomy, and expose the impact of coercive power dynamics. Most importantly, my guests remind us that nobody has to walk this path alone. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Elayna Love, a former Mormon I first connected with through the Shameless Sexuality Conference, created by Janice Selby and her organization, Divorcing Religion. Elayna is a content creator whose work directly challenges the narratives so many of us grew up with, especially around sex, shame, and bodily autonomy. Her story is one of radical self-ownership and the power of creating your life on your own terms. In our conversation, we'll explore Elayna's childhood, where obedience to the Mormon Church often meant abandoning herself, and what it looks like to reclaim both body and mind through somatic movement and reconnecting with how we carry ourselves in the world. I'm so grateful Elayna has chosen to share her story here. Let's meet Elayna. Help the sisters keep this healing content coming. Like, subscribe, and comment. Drop some dollars, or support us by becoming a channel member or patron for extra perks. Hello there, Elayna. It is so good to have you on the channel. We've been talking about this for kind of a little while at this point. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this.
Because we met in May at Shameless Sexuality. And I feel really lucky because before I even met you, I got to see you in some lovely, spicy outfits because you were a performer at Shameless Sexuality.
Yes, I was the one and only performer.
Yeah, so I got to see you dance there in your studio for the entire audience that was attending that online conference. And it was rather magical. And you taught us all a little bit about, what was it, sensual striptease?
You can say somatic dancing, somatic movement.
Yeah, I really appreciated it too, because you kind of brought to light how important it is not only for your own body or not only for your partner or whoever you're performing for, but for your own connection to your body as you do that kind of a dance. So I found it really helpful for myself because I can definitely be a little bit awkward about anything that is like that for myself. So,
I love hearing that. I really love hearing that. That makes me really happy when like something that I do or said like had a positive impact on someone. So that was the goal. I'm glad that happened.
but it was good to feel like I had the autonomy myself to feel like I could say, yeah, I'm going to watch this beautiful woman do a spicy dance and learn from her and think she's beautiful and have that be okay, have that be safe. Because for myself, there's so much of my past conditioning that would serve to tell me that I'm bad or that you were bad or something in that scenario. And none of that's true. So I felt it was like a really liberating experience to see you do your spicy dance.
I love that. Yeah, my burlesque performance.
So I know that you came from a Mormon background, and that was actually part of that performance. So we can talk a little bit about that dance, but then I'd like to go back to your roots in the Mormon cult. So,
Yeah.
what was it that you were showing with that performance that you did that day at Shameless Sexuality?
So it was a burlesque performance, and it was my life story told through dance. I grew up very Mormon. I was born a fifth generation Mormon on my mom's side. My dad was a convert to the church. Weirdly, my dad was the strict one, and my mom was always like the more lax one. um, and so I started off the dance wearing this fantastic pioneer woman dress, this like prairie woman dress that like went all the way up to my neck and down to my wrists and ankles. And my hair was up in this tight bun. And then I danced around like I was reading the Book of Mormon, and then started having some doubts about it. And the music went with the story. And I lost my faith, and then I left and never ever thought I would go to a spicy club. And then it was an avenue that was available, and I left the church and I went to dancing in a club. And so then in the performance, I took off my Pioneer Woman dress and I had a spicy bikini on underneath, and I danced around on the pole and was liberated.
Amazing. Amazing. And if I recall, the pivotal moment for me in watching that performance of yours was when you actually had the Book of Mormon in your hands and you ripped the crap out of it.
Yes, I did. I skipped over that part. Yeah, that was very liberating for me personally too, to just so in my personal life, I did have a ceremonial burning of all my church literature. And then in the performance, yeah, I was like I did like I started off like I was a missionary, like knocking on doors, and then I'm reading it, and as I'm reading it, I'm like having more questions, and then lost my faith and just ripped the crap out of it. That thing was actually really hard to rip. They did not it's like they knew people were going to rip it up and they tried to resist it.
Right? That's funny. So it almost seems like that performance you used as the way to tell the story of your deconstruction.
Yeah,
Would you say? Okay. So,
exactly.
and now I guess I'm of the opinion that our deconstruction of those things never really ends. You know, we're always finding new things that are still affecting us from our early indoctrination. But that's kind of a moment, right? That you got to the place where you could kind of summarize your story into that one dance and be able to boldly show your transformation and show your rejection of your faith. What did that feel like to you to be able to do a dance like that?
I just got chills when you asked that. It was so empowering. It was very freeing, and it was actually putting the whole dance together. It kind of helped organize some things in my brain that, when you go through an experience like leaving high control religion, it feels like everything is just swirling around like you're caught in a tornado. And so this just kind of like organized it and put it into perspective. And it was very empowering and liberating to not only just tell my story, but to express it with my whole body. And that's what I was talking about in my speech beforehand too, was just, not just the stuff in your head, but like using your whole body to heal. Because the trauma lives in our body. I talked about this too. And so it was just another pivotal moment of healing and reclamation. And I will agree with you 100% that we never fully deconstruct and reconstruct. I'll think I'm there, and then it's like, oh, wait, here's something that was like, it's like you're cleaning out a closet and you just keep finding more things.
Right. Now you mentioned trauma in your body, and I think that's really powerful that you talk directly about using your body to overcome that trauma that you carry. Um, can you say more about that? Like how the trauma lives in the body and kind of what that's like?
Yeah. So when I was Mormon, they would teach us from a very young age. There was actually a song about it of how to be reverent. And so we were told being reverent was folding your arms and bowing your head and closing your eyes. And this is a very locked in, closed off position. It's a very submissive position. You know, it's not a power pose. I'm sure you've heard of power posing, like
Sure.
this is like a power pose or this or you know it's the complete opposite of that. And so when you're in one like that position with your arms folded and your head bowed and your eyes closed, you're very powerless. And then if they're telling you this message in church of like how you're bad and you need saving and you can't do anything on your own, you're not to be trusted, all of these terrible messages, and then you just kind of shrink more and more, and you get more shame, and then you get even smaller, and it just becomes this feedback loop. And so then your body, of course your body's connected to your brain, right? And so you literally get like muscle memory from hunching
Oh.
over and being made so small. And so then like it was actually when I left the church and I started dancing, our house mom was like, stand up straight, throw those shoulders back. Because I would go out on stage like this. And so they taught me how to like open up, and it like hurt in a good way because it was a way of standing that I'd never stood before. And I'd never had that like presence or that confidence to even stand up that way. So a big part of my healing was actually physically in my body of unclenching myself like that. And I think something that people can maybe relate to more is like if you're stressed out and you start tensing, like clenching your jaw or something, and how good that feels to just relax and let go of that tension. It's kind of like that, but on full body scale.
Yeah. I find that to be so incredibly powerful. And I don't know that I've heard anyone speak of it in exactly that way. Like there is something that you have insight into because of your current chosen profession that I think you can teach the rest of us about deconstruction and what it actually means to reclaim your body. Like,
Hmm.
damn, truly, like, because I know the whole thing about the body keeps the score and all of that, but I never, even with other women I've spoken to, they speak about that notion that they had to make themselves small. But wow, the link between the physically head bowed thing with you don't matter, you don't even get to look around
Hmm.
at your world or be seen is like really powerful to realize how important it is for us to be upright, to have our chest open, and to
Hmm.
be able to embrace seeing the world and having the world see us. Like, damn.
Huh. I haven't thought of that.
I
I guess
mean,
I haven't heard anyone else talk about it quite in those terms. I've heard like the trauma lives in your body and those types of things, but I
but
don't
you're
know.
you're embodying it right now.
Yeah. And even like sitting here, I'm catching myself trying to like hunch over. I'm like, no, sit up straight.
Yeah. Boy, I'm someone with ligament issues and that rings very true just because
Oh,
it's
interesting.
very hard to keep myself put together because of that. But
I wonder if that has anything to do um, with the religious trauma.
I mean,
You know,
it's
I
such an
might be out of line, but
no, I mean, you never know, right? I think there is so much connection between our conditioning and our mind and our body that we don't have insight into yet, and we're just starting to crack that code in some of the psychological realms of study that we have. So, yeah, no, I mean, really, I appreciate your perspective on that for sure.
just,
I cheers. Hmm.
I am gonna get my fidget
Oh,
to
yes.
do this. This is
Okay,
from
so yeah, go ahead and tell us about your fidget before we get started with your story.
This is from the Jesus Loves Spicy Dancer ladies, and they go around to all the clubs, and they're from a church, and they love mamas, and they're trying to save specifically spicy dancers. And they gave me a fidget, and I'm like, oh, perfect. Okay, I'll take your gifts, but I'm not going to fall for your love bombing.
Been
But I
there,
love
done that.
like I know how this works. Okay,
Right,
so I'm
right.
gonna fidget
Okay.
because this. Speaking of keeping your body regulated and healing your body, this kind of helps my brain. So
Yeah, absolutely. A fidget is such an important tool for so many people.
I've been stalling on the childhood stuff, but let's get into
Okay,
it.
you're good. You're good. Okay, so I would love to know a little bit more about your childhood and how you became a Mormon and your thoughts on being a Mormon as a kiddo.
So I was born into the church. Both my parents were Mormon. My I was born as a fifth generation Mormon on my mom's side, and then my dad was a convert, and he joined the church before my parents got married. Um, and feel my heart rate going up just just saying that. And I grew up very isolated. It's really hard to explain sometimes how isolated I was. Um, you could walk a mile in any direction from my parents' house, and you would not hit another house except for my grandmother's, who was also Mormon. And this was intentional. Like I love the countryside, and there's things that I miss about it, but and I don't want to put the blame on my parents because they got this from the church. There's this idea that you need to keep your children from the world. There's actually a quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but if you train them up in the name of the Lord, then they will not depart or something
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
Um, so, they thought that if they kept their children away from the world, if they were never exposed to the world and places like spicy clubs,
Specifically.
then we would never leave and we would stay in the church forever. So information was intentionally withheld, and misinformation was intentionally given to us. I'm saying us. I have two older sisters and a younger brother. My brother left the church. My sisters are still Mormon, and uh, the only people I associated with when I was a kid were other Mormons. And the only time that we would associate with non-Mormons was if we like absolutely had to, like they're at the grocery store or at I was in ballet, like they were at ballet class or something.
Oh,
But it's
that sounds like
definitely,
dancing.
oh, yes,
So they
yes,
they were the ones to introduce you to dancing, let it be
it
known.
did. And it definitely had an effect on my current career. I think they were trying to keep me very pure and innocent. It backfired. So we did go out into the world a bit. I know there's some people who would probably think that a dance class is super scandalous. Mormons do allow dancing, but definitely not the style of dancing that I do now.
Right.
Some religions don't allow dancing at all.
Okay, okay.
Um,
So, um, you're saying you were isolated, like your home was far out in rural spaces and you
yeah,
went to Mormon church. So you're saying that you didn't go to public school either.
I was homeschooled for 4 years,
Oh,
and
okay.
then when my mom she was a certified teacher, so I did actually get a decent education while I was homeschooled, and I actually loved it. I just didn't realize the social damage that it was doing to me. Um, and then when we did go back to public school, my parents intentionally had us transfer to a different school district that was smaller, so less exposure again to other kids and the world. And I think that's really funny. And I really wanted to go to the school that I was supposed to go to because we lived in a weird, like, transition space. So it was like in the middle of two very small towns. And so the church we went to was in one town, and then the school that they sent us to was in the other town. So all the kids from the other town didn't go to my church, but it was smaller. And then all the kids from church didn't go to my school. So it was just very lonely and very isolating and really hard to connect with anyone. And there was kind of this condition of if you do make a friend with a non-member, you're supposed to try and convert them. And that's a
Oh
very
no.
quick way to lose friends. And the kids at my school were mostly Southern Baptist and really did not like Mormons and really did not like when I kept preaching. And the church teaches you that you have to save people. You know,
Okay.
if you love them, like there's so many, they teach boundary pushing. Like it's your
Oh.
duty to save these people, even if they don't want to. And if you had an opportunity, this is what they literally teach. If you had an opportunity to share the gospel with your friend and you didn't, and they never get an opportunity later to hear the gospel, and then they get sent to hell, that's your fault.
Oof.
So messed up. So my friends that I was making, I started preaching Mormonism to them, and they didn't like that very much. And then I kept on with it, and so they really didn't like that, and understandably. Um,
So it sounds like, are you saying that you felt like you really believed it? Like you were
yeah,
fully on board? Well, I
yeah,
guess what I'm hearing from you also sounds like maybe you didn't have any way to see that there was anything else. But yeah, how would you describe your belief as a child?
yeah, definitely both of those things that you said. I was so on fire for the gospel. I was a zealot. I 100,000% believed it. Um, I was like the of my siblings, I was the most into the church. Like my sisters had posters of like boy bands and stuff on their walls, and I had pictures of Jesus.
Oh, your sisters are the ones that are still Mormon
Yeah.
now.
And then my brother had Britney Spears because he's gay.
Oh, 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 oh. Boy,
So
that had to be an experience for him then.
yeah, yeah, he had a really tough time. He came out later, and that was something that broke my testimony was like, wait a minute, my brother's not an abomination, and the church is saying he's an abomination. No, like that's not okay. And so yeah, so I believe the church wholeheartedly. Um, you asked earlier what I think about children being indoctrinated into it. I think it's completely horrible. I think it's child abuse to be teaching something that you have zero evidence for, that um, not only do you not have evidence for it, there's evidence against it. And then it's so isolating and restricting. And it teaches that you're bad and your body is bad, and your body is like this meat suit that God has placed you in to tempt you. And if you resist all of these temptations that this meat suit wants to do, then you're worthy of heaven. And
Oh, oh, that's so interesting. I mean, that's almost like separating you from your body through that kind of narrative. To,
yeah,
is that okay?
they would have, I'm remembering a Sunday school lesson that they did where they would have a glove, and then they'd say this glove represents your body, and then your hand is your spirit, and then you can see, you can wiggle your fingers, but the glove is just kind of limp until you put your hand into the glove, and now the glove is alive and can do these things, but the glove is there to tempt you and test you, and it's only temporary until you are separated again, and then you go to heaven. And yeah, so I'm
Whoa.
very disconnected from my body.
Wow. Okay, so like the hand, the you, the spirit of you is separate from the meat suit, but the meat suit sort of has a mind of its own because it's like evil and trying to make you, have sexy hormones and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Okay. Wow. I mean, we talk about the idea of like being disembodied and kind of like, not like when people talk about getting grounded or whatever, like, yes, it goes in a woo-woo place too, but it's that idea of like actually feeling like I'm the one looking out of my eyes and I'm not just mentally hiding over there somewhere. And so
Yeah.
that is absolutely blowing my mind that the way they teach that is like literally disembodying you. It's, like I think I was taught things that were like, that you couldn't that you were evil, and so it kind of made you like not want to be who you were or not want to be in your body. But I
Mhm.
haven't heard it expressed so deliberately to
Well,
separate you from your body. Wow.
that's it's so interesting talking to other people who were from different brands of cults
Yeah.
and have so many similarities, but then there's like those weird little details that are so different.
Yeah, it's like the same strategy but different tactics to get there.
Mhm.
Ew. Okay. All right. So, what else do you remember from your childhood that stands out?
So when I was a teenager, I started getting very, very depressed. And I was like this enigma. Is that the right word? No one could figure me out. And I would I was having behavioral problems at school and um, just like I was being taken to therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists to figure out why I was misbehaving so much. And, I was just crying a lot and I was very, very depressed. And um,
Were these religious or Mormon psychiatrists and stuff, or were they like of the world
the
professionals?
first one was the first therapist I went to. My parents drove like 2 hours in one direction out of the way to go see this Mormon therapist because they didn't want me to talk to a worldly therapist who was going to say something like, your body is totally normal and healthy. Your sexy hormones are totally normal and healthy. And so he just kind of pushed the church even harder onto me. And I was really confused. I was getting these messages um, from the church every Sunday about how your body is bad and the law of chastity. So for people who aren't Mormon, the law of chastity is no sex before marriage. And then they take it a step further of like no sexual thoughts before marriage and, no heavy kissing. They would always say no necking and petting. And we could never quite figure out what necking and petting meant.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You doing this with your neck and like petting the top of your head. I'm
So,
seeing like a lizard necking.
or like giraffes, the male giraffes, they like clack their necks
Oh,
together. Maybe
oh,
that's
that's
it.
cute.
No.
I didn't know that.
Okay, I laughed so hard. I'm sorry, I laughed right over you, but I laughed so
Okay.
hard because the one sex talk I got from my dad went like this. You know how people have sex? They start petting. You know why people start petting? Because they were necking. You know why people are necking? Because they were kissing. You know why people were kissing? Because they held hands. So what's the moral of the story? Don't hold hands. So anyway, I think it's generational, like, right? I think it's our parents' age and older that had like necking and petting as the words they would use.
Maybe so. Yeah.
But the way I understand it is necking is like what we call making out now,
Yeah,
probably
I
with
think
tongues.
sitting on the neck and you know.
And petting is touching the middle parts, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I did figure it out. I just think it's funny to make fun of it.
It is. It really is.
So then they would talk about no sex before marriage, no necking and petting. And then, control your thoughts too, and your thoughts lead you, it's like a slippery slope kind of thing. So I was not only scared of my own body, but I was scared of my own brain and my own thoughts. And I have a very vivid imagination and I'm a very creative person. And so, I hit puberty and I was a normal human teenager having normal human teenage thoughts. and then feeling absolutely terrified of myself and my thoughts and thinking I was a freak. And I was, there was just something really, really deeply wrong with me. I thought I was some kind of pervert. And I was just like wanted to crawl out of my skin, like I felt like I was going to hell, or the Mormon version of hell. They have their own weird little version of it. Um, and I didn't even have a boyfriend. I'd never even been kissed at this point, and I just was so afraid of my own body and what it was doing and my normal healthy bodily functions. I was um I was really suicidal, and I was cutting myself,
Oh,
and yeah, so anyway, fidgeting.
yeah. Well,
um
given that you had this like high control upbringing and that you got to that point of self-harm, um, how do you connect those things? What's the story you tell yourself about that now? Because this happens to a lot of people, and I don't know that in general public discourse we're connecting the high control that people experience in their childhood, whether it's within a church of narcissistic family cult, or whether it's like even the stringency of like public school or whatever. And so I'm curious how you kind of see that for yourself, like how those things are connected.
yeah, I definitely see the connection now, like looking back at that. um Sorry, I have this hair that keeps tickling me. Make me crazy. I definitely see the connection now of just this constant barrage of messaging of you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. And then, the outcome of me harming myself and just wanting to be done with this life because it felt so hopeless. And I was a teenager. I didn't have a fully developed brain. And so it's a really emotional time. And whenever you say that having a normal, healthy bodily function is going to send you to hell, and you deep down genuinely believe that, I don't know what other outcome there that can be expected. And then they're just like, oh, your behavior is bad. You're crying and you're not concentrating in school, and your grades are going bad. And it's like, because my brain was just so bogged down with this. And I did eventually go to some worldly therapists, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, because on paper, they're like, okay, your parents are still together. They're not divorced. You've lived in the same house your whole life. You go to church every Sunday. That's good. Yeah, we don't have any idea why you'd be depressed. Your life's perfect.
Oh no. Okay.
Completely missed it. And of course, I didn't know what was going on. And then later, when I was 19, I was talking to a bishop. The church teaches you that self-pleasure is an addiction and needs to be
Okay.
eradicated. And they even have like their own like 12-step program to cure you of your addiction. They teach that corn is an addiction. I wasn't watching anything. I don't need to. I've got it up here.
Wait, so they had a 12-step program for masturbatory activities?
Yeah, to
Holy
cure
shit.
you of your addiction. And so I was talking to a bishop, because you're not allowed to uh, get to heaven and do the churchy stuff. And I was so confused, and I'd gotten a lot of mixed messaging. And it wasn't something that was really talked to, especially to girls, because they just assumed that they didn't do that. They just are constantly like, be modest, don't show your shoulders.
Right.
um, but I didn't even know what that word was until I was 17. And so I get so frustrated. Let me fidget with this. So this bishop, I told him what was going on, but then I told him that I noticed that I cut myself less whenever I self-pleasured. And he said, It's better to cut yourself than to do that.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Are you
so yeah.
really? Really?
Yeah.
They were not joking around when they told you the body was evil. Like they didn't give a fuck if you cut it up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Elayna. The ugh, I'm just gonna have to have a moment because the direct harm of that is not a thing you should have had to experience.
oh, and then on top of that, let me just make your moment better for you. And thank you. On top of that, they teach you that the bishop is always right and you should always follow the bishop's counsel. And they would even say, like, yeah, the bishop is human. By the way, the bishop is just a random man that they appoint. There's no background check, there's no qualifications. It's just whoever they feel like. So it could be anyone, just any man that they decide, like, okay, you're going to be bishop now. I can get into just
So
how deeply harmful.
is
And
that a
then
popularity contest or a manipulation game?
probably something like both. I did always notice that the people who were called to be bishops, they had a certain income level.
Okay.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
uh, and it's not a paid position. uh, that's another weird thing about the church. But um what was I going to say? Oh, they teach you that the bishop's always right and you should always follow his counsel. And even if you think the bishop is wrong, it's better to be obedient than to risk sinning by being disobedient and not following the bishop's counsel. Like, even if the bishop tells you to do something wrong, God will be easy going on you as long as you were obedient. And so when
I was just following orders, sir.
yeah, I was just following orders.
Okay.
They definitely prioritize obedience. And so I was too scared to tell my family about any of this, but I did tell them, like, hey, the bishop told me something that it's not sitting right with me. I don't actually agree with it. Like, your body knows things. We have instincts. We have hard wiring in us that have evolved for millions of years. Your
Mhm.
body knows when something is wrong. And I was, telling my family, like, something's wrong here. And all they could say is, well, just, follow the bishop's counsel.
Oof, that hits the gut.
Yeah.
Uh, I just in this current moment, I'm recognizing how, in light of Epstein files and all that shit, I'm just recognizing how a scenario where there's a bishop like that is so ripe for harm to come
Hmm.
to people without a voice, without power, and for
Hmm.
them to feel like they can't say a thing about it.
Yeah, you're very, very.
Oh, yeah.
I am okay now. Ish.
I mean that paints the picture though, for sure. Like I think you have put such a strong point on how clear that type of coercion and manipulation is and how what is it? I get what's the word I'm looking for? Like that type of I don't even know because it's like lifelong indoctrination.
Hmm. I
And
don't even know what to call it. Abuse. Like, mental abuse doesn't quite grasp it, I feel like.
it's like stealing you.
Hmm.
It's like they tried to not let you have yourself. And my gosh, that's the one thing we come into this world with is who we are and our bodies.
Yeah, and that's a common thing across all of these high control religions that I've noticed is you're supposed to diminish yourself and build God up. And then the more you stop being you, the more room you allow for God to come in and replace you or whatever. And yeah, it's icky. It's
It's
icky. You're not supposed to have any individualism.
right. Well, and I was noticing what you were just saying. I was thinking about my time in evangelicalism, which, as we like to say, is like, sh sunshine and rainbows out your ass. kind of kind of belief system, and yet they're the ones that will have bumper stickers that are like that less of me, more of him, however they write
Mhm.
that out. And it's the insidiousness of that. I think for as many of these interviews as I've done and heard these stories, it's really hitting me afresh how destructive that is to the person getting to own their fucking self.
Mhm.
And it's the reason we do this. It's the reason we're talking about these things. Because if I had my way, there is not another child that would have to experience that.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to go on a little tangent, but you were asking,
Do it.
what I think about children being brought up in this. Um, it is mandatory that from the time that they're 12 years old, they have to go have what's called an interview with the bishop, where they go in alone to this locked room, no
Mm,
cameras, with the bishop, who again can
mm,
be
mm.
anyone. They don't do background checks. And um, it's just brother so and so.
Oh,
Um, who, sorry, my brain is stumbling.
it's
I
okay.
say so and so because we called each other brother and sister.
I mean,
um,
and you know what? Like, I fully recognize this stuff can be very emotionally activating. So if at any point you need to just like, let's just chill for a minute, like that's okay too.
yeah, so Mormons believe that we're all spiritual brothers and sisters. And so we call each other like by our last name, like brother so and so, sister so and so. So I'd be Sister Love. So back to the bishop interviews, the bishops are required to go through these questions, to go through this questionnaire with the children from the time that they're 12 years old. And it's mandatory, I think, like once a year that they have to go have an interview with the bishop. And then he's supposed to ask these questions about sexual purity. And that's so disgusting to me. And one of the spicy clubs that I worked at was down the street from, or up the street. It was at the top of the hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a Mormon church. And I just would think about that. Like, if the club had a room like that where the men were allowed to bring minors in and ask them that list of questions, and there's no security, the door is locked, it can go on for as long as the bishop wants it to or as the man wants it to, that club would be shut down in a heartbeat, as it should be. But then down the street, just like a block away, that's happening and it's totally fine. And no one bats an eye.
Oh my God. Yeah. The assumptions we make about a place based
Mhm.
on what the people in that place have said about it. Holy moly. Because I kind of feel like at a spicy club, there are enough women there that would protect any minors being brought in.
100%. And first of all, even the women there, but you have to get your ID checked, you have to get it scanned, like you have to be, some clubs are 18 plus, most of them are 21 plus because they serve alcohol. But you have to be 21. And a lot of the clubs that I work at, they actually have an extra step with their dancers to make sure that they're not using an ID or that they're being pressured into this. And we're told, like, hey, if you need any help, let us know. They're connected to authorities and everything to make sure that that stuff isn't happening.
Mhm.
So, yes, if a minor was there, and like, we would not allow that. That would
A-
not be.
And yet, the church down the street, because they're a church and have gotten a pass in our society as that church status, making them good,
Mhm,
this man with no background checks can spend an hour in a room alone with a 12-year-old girl asking her sexy questions.
mhm.
That is so fucked up. It makes me want to puke.
Right. Not only can spend, is required to spend this time, is required to ask these questions.
Gross. Gross.
So that's how I feel about children being brought up in Mormonism specifically, but any type of system that limits your natural creativity and your natural curiosity for knowledge and says that any healthy bodily function is bad, that's not a healthy environment for a child or for anyone, but especially for a child.
I concur. And isn't it bananas to realize how many people would still defend their right or someone else's right to take kids into that church and do all of those things, yet would be horrified if they even knew anyone or associated with anyone who's working at the Spicy Club, who's
Mm-hmm.
doing honest work that meets a human need
That's
and making a
adults,
living.
consenting
That's
adults.
adults.
No requirement to do this. No one's requiring me to dance. I could go do something else if I wanted to. But yeah, they're the ones that are trying to shut down my industry, but then they do this.
Right.
Those are the practices.
Wow. Thank you for that insight into the Mormon Church. That was a level of detail of the operations that I did not know.
You're very welcome. There was actually I think it was a lawsuit. There was something that happened a few years ago where people started putting pressure on the church about these bishop interviews, and nothing was done about it. The only thing that they did was they said, well, the parents can sit on the other side of the door if they want to.
Okay.
And that's all that was done about it.
Wow. That's not a lot of oversight.
No.
Whew. Okay, so that is very explanatory of the indoctrination that you received and the, let's just call it what it is, the emotional abuse, the sexual abuse to an extent. Well, how would you frame that? I mean, it
All
removing autonomy to me is sexual abuse. I think, maybe people who've experienced physical sexual abuse could argue a point around that, but it is it is destructive in so many of the same ways.
I think it is sexual abuse
Okay.
because it disconnected me from my own, I don't know how to say it. It disconnected me from myself. It caused trauma to my sex drive, I guess,
Okay.
to my thoughts and things. And so, yeah, I definitely do classify that as a form of sex abuse too.
Sure, sure. Okay, so that was your childhood.
Yeah.
At at what age, you've been doing these interviews starting at age 12 and dealing with your very normal, natural teenager sexy thoughts. So at what point did you start to go, huh, I need to get out of here, or huh, the church is wrong, or what was that process like? What was the cracks?
It wasn't until I was 26, actually. And I never thought I was going to leave the church. I still, despite all of that disgusting bullshit, thought that it was 100% true. I loved the church, or so I thought. In retrospect, they told me I was supposed to love it, so I did. And you love this, or you go to hell. Okay, I love
Yeah,
it.
that's free choice. Sure.
um, I wanted to serve a mission. I wasn't allowed to because I admitted that I had sexy alone time.
What?
How many people admit that? I was being honest. I was afraid that God was watching, and if I lied, then I was going to be punished. And now I've realized like everyone lied. everyone lied about that. I was honest, and then I got punished for it.
They wouldn't let you
Again,
go
I
on
went,
mission because you admitted to that?
yep, yep. So that's not why I left the church. So like I said, I was really struggling with mental health issues and just went through all of my teenage years, just this cycle of different antidepressants and different diagnoses of, oh, it's anxiety, oh, it's depression, oh, it's, I do think I genuinely have bipolar disorder. So that didn't help. That got diagnosed at 19. But then just like that with the religious trauma syndrome just was a nightmare. And um, I'd gotten married. I don't know if we have time to get into that story. I'd gotten married, wasn't allowed to get married in the temple for me being unworthy because I admitted to what I told you.
Are you serious?
And
What?
then him being very unworthy because he was an awful human. But yeah, that's why I wasn't worthy, was because I had this addiction to I'm laughing as a trauma response because it's just so ridiculous and so absurd and disgusting and invasive. Um, and so my now ex-husband was a complete loser, POS. But he also wasn't a good Mormon. He joined the church to get with me.
Hmm.
And so because of that, I don't want to give him any compliments. But because he wasn't a super good Mormon man, I had some freedom to think outside the box and had a different perspective. And he would ask questions sometimes. Like he would go to church with me in the beginning, and I remember one day coming home from church, he's like, "Why do they keep talking about the natural man being an enemy to God? Like, what's that about? Like human nature is an enemy to God?" And so
Oh, interesting.
there's some things that like a different perspective that I'd never been allowed to have before. Um, and again, I really don't want to give him any compliments. But if I'd been with a very strictly religious Mormon man, women are taught to obey their husbands,
Hmm.
which is disgusting. Um, but I would have had to obey, and so I was able to explore some alternative methods of healing, and I started studying self-hypnosis, which was a little woo woo. It was actually I was actually studying witchcraft.
Ooh.
Which I've come to the conclusion that's also not as real as it says it is, but that's where I learned the hypnotic process
Okay.
and hypnotic trance, which is a very normal thing, that a different state of being that humans can be in. So for people who don't understand that, who think it's just a bunch of woo woo, there's a lot of different alternate states that we can get into, and there's different ways that we can do that. Having a glass of wine is one of those ways to achieve an altered state, or you can do a lot of meditation and hypnosis and achieve an altered state that way.
Sure.
Both of them you should not do while driving. um,
I feel like I've experienced both of those things, like breathing techniques or the wine or
yeah.
other substances. And I realized at some point, like, oh, that's the same way that I thought I was feeling when it was like, ooh, that's the Holy Spirit. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
it's kind of the same. Hmm.
Yeah. So I was starting to see some things that just weren't making any sense. Like my ex-husband started drinking coffee, which is against the Mormon health code. And I was determined to prove that coffee was bad. And I did all of this research and it backfired.
Oh,
And then I
coffee.
found
You got saved by coffee. You escaped
coffee
by
woke
a
me up.
coffee. Coffee woke me up.
Um, and I had no desire to drink it. Now I'm like, can't take it away from me. I just was like, this is sinful and wrong, and you can't be bringing this into our home. How dare you? And then, yeah, like finding that out and then not getting any clear answers. And it was like, well, why are we not allowed to have coffee, but we can drink soda? And that's healthy. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And when I would ask for clarification, um, I would just get this, oh, well, it's an obedience thing, just whatever the Lord says in the moment, just be obedient and don't think about it. So there was that. And then the learning the hypnotic process. And I was sitting in church one day and realized that they took me step by step through the hypnotic process. And
Oh,
I was sitting there and I was just like, oh my God, I'm being hypnotized. And it's with a terrible message. It was, we were singing a hymn, and it was, Jesus died on Calvary to save a wretch like me. And I thought, a wretch like me? No wonder I'm so depressed. No wonder I have such low self-esteem. And so I just started to see that the root cause of my depression was the church. And it got to where I physically could not go into that church without having a panic attack. Like every single Sunday, like clockwork, I would walk in and my heart rate would start going up, and I would have to leave early because I was just sobbing my eyes out and shaking uncontrollably and just full blown panic attack every Sunday. And my brother saw me one day after church, and he'd already left at this point. And he was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, it just happens every Sunday. It's just my Sunday panic attack after church." And
oh,
he's like, "Maybe if you're reacting this badly, this isn't good for you. Judge things based on the results." And I'm just
on the
like,
fruit it bears,
yeah,
perhaps.
exactly. Blessed be the fruit.
Oh gosh.
um, yeah. So I said I was going to take a break, and I'm technically still on break.
Okay. And this is at 26.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you are at that point you're still married to Mr. X.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was, at the risk of revealing my chronological age. I don't care. I'm 39 now, and that was 2012. I remember January 1st, 2012. I was like, okay, it's a new year. I'm gonna try something different. I'm not gonna go to church for a little bit and just take a break. I still believed in it. But then the longer that I spent time out of it, the less, I wasn't getting that weekly dose, or sometimes it was more than once a week. A lot of times we were at church 3 or 4 times or every single day. Like when I was in high school, I had to go to church every single day. So I wasn't getting that brainwashing on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And I started to actually think clearly, and I started to have more questions, and I started having some conversations with my brother, and I actually listened to him this time. I was like, okay, explain your side, and I'm going to actually shut up and listen instead of sitting there waiting to talk with whatever come back. Because I'd heard him, he left, how many years before that? He'd been out of the church for several years at that point. And so I'd heard his rants, but I realized I'd never really listened and digested them.
Okay. Because you were still sold out on fire and all of that and
Yeah,
believed
it,
it.
it
Okay.
was just like I would just kind of sit there waiting for him to finish talking so I could be like, but the church is true because I felt it, or whatever comeback that they program you with. And so this time I actually listened, and what he was saying made sense, and the church just was not making any sense. Like the coffee thing, there were just so many other things that it's like, but over here you're saying this, and over there you're saying that. Another example is they say the word of God is eternal and unchanging, but then they change policies all the time. Like Black people weren't allowed to have the priesthood, and then all of a sudden in the 70s they're allowed to have the priesthood.
Oh, God has
You're,
interesting timing, right along
you're
with civil
right,
rights, huh?
right, and it was just the Lord's revelation. But it was always around interesting timing, things like that. And but then they're unchanging. So
Right.
um yeah.
Well, and I feel like whenever I've talked about stuff like that before, it brings up for me this idea that it breaks your brain, right? Because
Yeah.
it forces you to hold two things as true that can't possibly be true at the same
Mhm.
time. And so you have this like little crack that happens
Mhm.
where it's like it kind of shuts some things down because you can't like critically think about it if you're
Yeah.
having to hold those things as true.
Yeah, exactly. The My brother explained exactly that. He's like, "Do you know what cognitive dissonance is?" I'm like, "Nope, never heard of it."
Oh,
And I was
okay.
like, "Oh, okay."
Yay for brother. Yay for brother. Wow.
And yeah, so um, I heard someone call it the crazy making of Christianity. It's like, yeah, it breaks your brain and it drives you literally crazy.
Well, and so much of it seems like our response to it, like cognitive dissonance even, is a protective response, right? Like, because you're told all these things and this is what how you stay safe. Like, not just
Yeah.
now, but into eternity. And so like you'll make up wild stories because your drive to stay safe is bigger than your drive to figure out what's real in that moment. Because I think, when you are feeling like it could make you unsafe, it also puts you into like the fight or flight thing. You're talking about a panic attack. Like that's that same energy, right? Of
Hmm.
like you can't like you don't know how to handle yourself because you aren't really allowed to think critically about it in that moment.
Yeah, and they definitely make you unsafe. Like they physically make you unsafe because they threaten you with losing your family if you leave the church.
Oh, right.
And and that is what happened. I did lose my community, and um my family has a very rocky connection now.
Yeah.
And the church itself tells you that if you aren't worthy of the kingdom of God, aka Mormon, then your family's going to go to heaven and you're not. And yeah, and we're tribal creatures. We're social animals. We need our herd. And if you lose that, that's a death sentence, you know?
Right. The lizard brain part, right?
Yeah, the
I don't
lizard
know.
brain.
I don't know if that's exactly the right way to talk about it, but that's the way I say it of yeah, it's like, yeah, the existential crisis of I'm gonna die if I
Hmm.
lose these people. Well, thankfully, we also have access to a whole world without that now. And the Rocky exists for so many people, so many families have lost what should be a really healthy lifelong connection. I don't know. I just feel like there's so much coercion and parents that think that their adult children don't get autonomy because they didn't do it the way they taught them all those years ago. And it's so heartbreaking
Hmm.
to realize how much human suffering has come out of these ideologies that were taught to children because they make no damn sense and
Hmm.
don't reflect reality and separate us from our beautiful, gorgeous bodies that we
Right?
should get to love and appreciate and enjoy and take good care of for our whole life.
Hmm.
And we lose that. We lose that when we're in these high control groups. Oh, Elayna, that's so much. So much that you've been through. I know these are never easy.
But
Ugh.
so I left in 2012, January 1st, and then August 13th. It was a Friday the 13th. It was a full moon, and my menstrual cycle started. So maybe witchcraft is real. I started working at the Spicy Club, and I'd never been to a club like that in my life. And that was like the place of sin and debauchery that like we would always say in Sunday school, what's a place you're not supposed to go to? What's a place that doesn't have the spirit? Like a bar, a club.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, really?
I went there. I'd never been there. I just wanted information. And it was a Friday night, mind you. And they're like, yeah, you're cute. You want to work tonight? And I needed money. So I was like, I don't know what to do. This doesn't dance. I can do ballet. I took ballet when I was a kid. I was pretty sure this wasn't ballet. Uh,
You know,
and
I'm
the
sure
closest
people wouldn't mind if you throw a pirouette in there.
I do, I still have some pirouettes, and I bring some ballet roots into it. So,
Nice.
and what was really liberating about this type of dancing was I asked, so like, what are the moves? Because and there's certain moves that you can learn, like to climb the pole and invert and stuff. And I was like, what are the moves? And they're like, there are no moves. I'm like, what? They're like, you move how you want to. What? That
What? You're
doesn't
not going to control my body at all?
I get to decide. I get to just move however I feel like moving. And like there's some things you can learn, some techniques and things, but ultimately it's a very freeing dance. And there's pole dance classes now where they have taken the moves that we in the club made up and they've put names to them and decided what the right way is. No shade on that. You can definitely go take that type of class and learn safety and not fall off the pole. Like,
Sounds
um,
good.
but it's also really important to understand where the roots of pole dancing come from and what that style of dance actually is. It's not supposed to have moves. It's supposed to be, how do you feel like moving? Because I can do a move and it's going to look very different from on my body than on your body.
Hmm.
And you can do something that's going to look really great for you, but we don't have the same body. So it's not going to translate the same. So it's really about getting that connection. Now I'm going on a whole rant about pole dancing in the club.
Oh, that's great.
um, and then, so that was 2012 in August. And then I moved from Texas to Portland in November of that same year and had some eye-opening moments about my husband at the time, which I learned actually through the club, learned that he was not a great person and
Oh,
started to learn how to very quickly see, you know, what types of people are going to be problematic. And we would talk about it in the dressing room of like, watch out for this guy or, and the bouncers, this is kind of messed up, but the bouncers a couple times had to come pull guys off of me because I would just freeze and I didn't know what to do. And they were like, you have got to learn to stand up for yourself. If you're going to be in this industry, you've got to learn to stand up for yourself. And it's not just this industry, it's just in general in life. You've got to learn to stand up for yourself. They said you've got to learn how to say no and enforce it. And I realized that these moves and these manipulation tactics that these guys at the club were doing was what my ex-husband had done to me. And
oh,
that was not a fun realization to come to.
like,
And I
oh shit, I'm
had
married
to,
to a bastard.
yeah, yeah, we called them creepers. There's creepers and there's customers. I love the customers, but the creepers don't get to stay in the club because they are creepers and they don't behave.
Okay, so what are the maybe like top three signs that you would say that you learned through this industry, like to point out a creeper?
They very quickly do not respect your boundaries. So, like in a conversation, they might be asking me really personal questions, like "Where do you live?" or like, so Elayna is my stage name. It's my real stage name because we don't use our real names because we don't want creepers to find out, our personal information. And so a lot of people know that dancers use a stage name. And so they'll be like, what's your real name? What's your real name? Like constantly asking you questions that would push your boundaries or like uninvited touching and then not taking no for an answer. it was really clear to me in the private dance area very quickly. I noticed that there were two types of guys. There were the guys that would take no for an answer and would respect your boundaries. And a lot of them, you don't even have to tell them to respect you. And then there were the guys who wouldn't, no matter what you said. And those are the guys that I walk out on and let the bouncer know, like, this guy's not respecting me. Um, and so, like, it can even be like I'm trying to say this carefully. I don't think there's anything wrong with like a little gentle shoulder touch. But if someone says, hey, don't touch me, and you continue to touch them, then that's a problem, even if it's their shoulder or their hair or their feet. Like, if they don't want to be touched at all, that is their boundary. And if someone starts to violate that boundary, that's a big red flag.
Okay. And is that an understanding that if they're willing to push back past like a seemingly small boundary, that it can be expected that that will be a continuous process of like knocking down each new boundary you try to put up?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Whew. It's a little disheartening to realize that that can happen in the club too, even the trying to get personal information, because I feel like I would hope that there's more separation from the women dancing, that the customers would have to like keep their distance, but maybe not.
Yeah. Um, a lot of it depends on what club you work at.
Okay.
Uh, and while it's at a higher rate at the club, which is why I think the clubs get such a bad rep, it's not isolated to the club. And this
Okay.
stuff happens everywhere. I've had this stuff happen to me at restaurants. I've had guys, and a lot of people talk about this, like, they follow you out of the restaurant. Like, I had someone follow me out of a restaurant. I was just wanted to go get some food. I was by myself, like, big deal. And he follows me to my car and it's all hounding me at my car and like standing where I can't pull out, like blocking my car and like asking me these, like, what's your number? What's your number? What's your name? Go out with me, like very pushy. And because I've worked in the club, I know how to deal with that. And um, so it happens at a higher rate. And there is more protection. We have bouncers, we have
Yeah.
managers, we have bartenders. We're not alone. I I remember being mad after I left that restaurant. I was like, "Where's the bouncer?"
Right.
Because when we leave the club, we don't leave alone. They escort us out so that we don't have somebody weird following us out. That's a sign of a predator if they wait for you to be alone when they're like, this guy could have come up to me at any point while I was sitting there in the restaurant, but he didn't. He waited for me to be alone. He isolated me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when he started with being pushy.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
Yikes. Wow. Okay. So paying attention to that boundary pushing. It's so interesting though, because like I think that is the right thing to say, and I'm learning what it means more. But I think for people coming out of high control groups to even understand what it means to set a boundary, because we were never
Mhm.
ever even given license or recognition to say, I'm allowed to say, I don't want you to do that, you
Yeah,
know?
that's a really good point, and it feels really icky. So I just want to like hold space for anyone who's having this realization. It feels really icky when you come to that conclusion that not only were you not allowed to set boundaries, it was heavily discouraged. Like, boundaries were bad, like privacy was bad. Like, what are you going to do? Oh, you want your own room? What are you going to do in that? Like, and then you're also taught, like I brought up before with my friends when I was a kid, you're taught to push boundaries, that you're supposed to push boundaries. And so it's just blurred across the whole board. Like, you're not allowed to have your own, and then you're supposed to push others to save them. And so
To
then
do what's right.
yeah, as an adult trying to figure out this stuff that's very basic. It's very instinctual to just be like, no, I don't want you to touch me, or I just want to be alone right now or whatever, or no, I don't like that. That's a very basic instinct to be able to set those boundaries and put up those walls and protect yourself. So
It
as an
does
adult,
not sound
to
instinctual to me. Now,
conclusion.
I was a high control group kid also, so like I'm recognizing I agree with you. I think it is a
Mhm.
natural thing, and that kids who know that they have a right to who they are and what they want will do that very naturally. But for those of us who were taught obedience, which I think is the
Mhm.
counterpoint to that, it's it's lacking. And to think like I can feel part of me shrink inside when you're
Yeah.
saying those things because my whole childhood and maybe even now to say, "Oh, please don't touch me." Like I was at a
Mhm.
conference and someone touched my knee like sitting across from me and I felt so icky about it. And I didn't say anything and I was in my 40s, right? So and so I'm like having a moment just recognizing how long this stuff hangs on and how much it talks us out of our our natural way of living safely in our bodies.
Yeah. It's still really hard for me too. And I've had lots of practice.
Yeah.
It's still really difficult because, yeah, there was that indoctrination of be obedient and being like a people pleaser. You never want to cause anyone any sort of discomfort. What would they say? Don't rock the boat. Don't cause contention. Uh,
Ooh,
Causing
there it
contention,
is.
I've found, is always like someone is doing something that you don't want them to do, but then if you push back and defend yourself, then you're the one who's causing a problem. That's how it's always been. Don't be contentious.
Yeah. I feel like so many church situations like that use the idea of, oh, you need to forgive them after you've been contentious because you were pushing back against harm to you. And then that's used to like let the perpetrator of the harm continue doing the harm because you forgave it, because you were rocking the boat by standing up for your own fucking autonomy. Okay.
So, oh, yes, preach. Yeah, they taught me that if I didn't forgive the people who hurt me, then I was going to be held accountable at the last day to the same degree as them. So then it just started this whole cycle, and that's how I got so stuck in this awful abusive marriage. Was you're just constantly supposed to forgive them. They would tell the story of like turn the other cheek, someone slaps you and then you're supposed to just turn the other cheek. And there was some funny story about one of my ancestors who, when they were a kid, said they were like having a fight with their sibling, and he's like, my brother slapped me, so I turned to the other cheek, and then he slapped that one too.
Isn't there even something about being forgiving like 77 times or something like that?
Yeah, they have a lot of things, but it's just like you're just constantly forgive, forgive, forgive. So then when a violation comes along, you have nothing to defend yourself against. You're just, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. And then what? And then, you
And
know,
then you just accept abuse at that point.
and then people want to say, well, why didn't you just leave? You're the one who said yes. You said yes to marrying him. Yeah. So what I was talking about earlier, um, how Mormonism literally told us to fold our arms and bow our head and close our eyes. And then if you were praying, you're supposed to be kneeling down with that too. So like kneeling down, just like this closed up fetal position, and like your neck is exposed, and it's just like one of the most vulnerable positions that you can be in. So we're animals, right? And we have these instincts to protect ourselves. So a lot of times when people get scared, they'll touch their neck. It's because you're protecting your neck. This is a really vulnerable area, you know. So if you find yourself stressed, like rubbing your neck can actually be really good for you. That's actually why I have my tattoo right here.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
My I love myself tattoo. So when I do
Oh,
this, I just do that. Um, so so being in that very vulnerable position, it does something to your mind too, of when you when you are vulnerable, you feel vulnerable, obviously, you know. If you were left out in a snowstorm with like a bikini, you're gonna feel very vulnerable. Um, so going on stage and learning to dance, and specifically learning to dance in a way that wasn't controlled, that wasn't rigid of these are the moves and you do not deviate from the moves. You know, I love ballet, but it's very controlled,
yeah.
and this is the way, and you know, be obedient. And so then just learning to open up my body was just, I can't even explain like how healing that was. And I would hear people talk about stage presence, and I would see these dancers that they just had something magnetic about them. And you know, they were gorgeous, but there was something else too, because there were other dancers who were gorgeous, who were, you know, all over the pole, but they weren't having that same type of magnetism. And I would ask, like, what is that? And I would hear, you know, I'd be told it's stage presence. And I'm like, okay, what is stage presence? And so if you think like, if you're making yourself small and you're not making eye contact and you know you're just in your own little world, people aren't going to notice you. You can go invisible. Like I would have this happen to me all the time. I would go to a restaurant or something, and the waiters would forget that I was there because I was just so small and meek and mild and humble and submissive, right? And so these dancers were talking about what stage presence is and how, you know, you open yourself up, you make yourself bigger, you have eye contact. Eye contact is a big one. And I'd moved to Portland and I didn't have a car at that time, and because stupid ex took it. So I was walking around a lot. Unfortunately, Portland is a very walkable city, unlike Houston, which is where I was from. Um, but I was having trouble with the crosswalks because, you know, the cars are turning and I'm trying to cross the street and they're not seeing me, even though the walk sign is on, because I'm like walking around like this, like really small. So I started like practicing this stage presence thing that I was learning while I was walking around. And I opened myself up, and while I'd be standing there waiting for the light to change, I'd be, you know, hands on my hips, which felt so awkward, so completely different from your arms folded to this. And I had my head up and my chest open and, you know, looking around and making eye contact with the people who were driving. And I noticed that they started stopping for me. They finally started seeing me, and I wasn't getting hit as much. Or I
Oh
mean,
my
I
God.
never got hit,
Okay.
but I had some close calls. I never got hit by a car.
Okay.
I wasn't getting almost hit as much. Big difference there. My brain is mush. Um, and so I started taking this like car presence thing that I was learning, taking that to the stage. And I started noticing that was happening now, that like people would be just sitting there, like staring at their drink or whatever. And then I would be on stage, like opening myself up, making myself big, just staring them down. And then they look up, and then I'm like, hi, come here, you know. And then I started to learn that type of magnetism of drawing people in. I think a lot of cult leaders know this.
That's
um,
a good point.
yeah, so stage presence, car presence, and then just like presence in general with the rest of the world of, you know, there's creepers everywhere, and they're not all men. There's a lot of women who are also creepers. There's predators everywhere. And it's important to have, an air of authority about yourself of like, I can defend myself. I can literally stand up for myself. I'm not going to be just making myself vulnerable for you and hunching over and showing you my neck. you
Right.
know, um, so
Do you think that's like an inner knowing as much as it is a physicality type thing? Like, can you be look big and powerful, but on the inside still be like, oh no, everyone's better than me or whatever?
yeah, I still do. But I think that um, your brain responds to your body too. So I would I would go to work and I'd be feeling really small, but I would start doing the body movements and I'd be smiling. And even though I felt like garbage, I would be telling people I'm fantastic, I'm doing great, I'm opening my body up, I'm standing like this. And then at the end of the night, I would feel better and I would feel more confident. And even though I didn't start off feeling that way, so fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Sure, sure. And almost like you were using your body, like your body's action to convince your brain or
Yeah.
to teach your brain is to
Mhm.
teach is maybe a better way to say it.
It interrupts that feedback loop of like,
Great.
um, I know I've seen it on a chart before, some kind of feedback loop between that your brain does, and you have to interrupt this loop. And so, like, when you hear people talk about how they're like downward spiraling or something, that's literally what's happening is your brain is you're feeling scared and so you're shrinking, and then because you're shrinking you're feeling more scared, so then you're shrinking more, and then it just keeps going until you're on the floor having a panic attack. um,
Right. Unless you have something to interrupt that loop.
yeah, so you need something and you can do it mentally or physically, and so I've just found that it's a really powerful way, and it can feel very uncomfortable when you're feeling scared and small. It feels really uncomfortable to just stand up and put your hands on your hips and hold your head up high. But it can really help to start to train your brain that you are strong. That's something that high control religions don't allow us to think, right? We're not supposed to be capable. We're not supposed to be strong. We're supposed to rely on God.
Hmm. We're much
We're
more pliable to the cult leader's will that way.
Mhm, exactly.
Ah. Wow. Is there anything else that you have done, like on stage or off, to sort of reclaim your body, like your self-care maybe, in the midst of the messaging that were forced to take in as a young person?
Yeah, self-care has been a really big thing, and that's what I learned from shout out to Dr. Marlene Winnell. She coined the term religious trauma syndrome, and she trained Janice, who hosted the Shameless Sexuality Conference.
Hmm.
So she talked about self-care a lot, and religion doesn't want you to take care of yourself. That's kind of like seen as shameful. So I with having a job at the club, it's literally my job to be a professional pretty person. And that's not that's not something that happens by accident very often. It might, but in my case, it's a very intentional effort. And so I just really dove into self-care at just like as much as I could get my hands on. Like my therapist says I need to do self-care anyway, whenever these, because I was, after I left the church I was still having panic attacks and struggling and stuff, even though I'd gotten away from that. It was just it's hard to explain when you have your whole universe shatter and turn upside down. It's not just like, oh well, okay, I'm moving on now.
Right.
So she said as a way to interrupt that feedback loop when I started having panic attacks was um, to start doing self-care. So I just got really into skincare and working out and eating right and having proper nutrition. And I maybe overdo it a little bit. I've had people be like, why are you going so hard? Why are you trying so hard? It's like, well, I've had to do so much healing though.
Mhm.
Like the average person who hasn't escaped a high control religion, you know, they don't maybe have to go as hard as I do because there's not as much damage that's been done. And so like it just there were days that the only way I could keep myself from completely falling apart and just being on the floor crying was to just have a really intense skincare routine and and just spend my whole day like having green smoothies and working out and uh just okay, what's the next self-care thing that I can do?
It's so funny. As you're talking about this, I'm having these thoughts that are centered around like angels and demons. It's almost like, you doing that self-care is like being an angel to yourself for these demons that, you know, potentially could come after you and those out of high control environments for their whole lives,
Mhm.
because they were attached to you. I don't know, I'm getting weird and metaphorical, but these demons of you're nothing, you need to be small, be obedient, got attached to us when we were tiny. And it does take a lot of that angelic power within to fight the spiritual battle, to go all the way with the metaphor, right? And so I get it. I think it's lovely, and I think it's great that you're even like questioning, oh, is that too much or enough? But like it works for you, and so great.
Mhm.
And you're being very constructive, not destructive with what you're doing to help yourself. I mean, because it's coping, right? Like we're all doing something to cope, but a cope can be destructive or
Yeah,
constructive.
and that's a really good thing to keep in perspective. I actually, at one point, I injured myself because I was working out too much, and I went from pole dancing to like a martial arts class, and then I got home and I did my workout video anyway because I was just like, okay, what's next? What's next? And then I tore my rotator cuff,
Oof,
not completely, but I injured it pretty badly. I woke up the next day and couldn't raise my arms overhead.
I see.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think with any coping thing, anything can get out of balance. So it's just important to keep things in balance. And like sometimes self-care isn't working out. Sometimes it's having a slice of pizza and taking a nap. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so now I do coaching for people. I'm not a therapist, but I feel like I've learned so much that I want to share this with other people. And I do have connections to some therapists who specialize in recovering from religious trauma syndrome. So if people do need that, I can help them find resources
Hmm.
and just try to teach self care and how to be present in your body and love yourself.
Yeah. So important. Can you imagine a world where everyone knew their value and loved themselves and like recognized each other person's need to value themselves and to love themselves and for all of
Mhm.
us to have enough? That's my big kick right now.
Yeah, no, I think we would have a lot less problems. And if we had a world where people were practicing self care with religion, again, it teaches you not to care for yourself. You're supposed to give it to God, you
Mhm.
know, and you're not supposed to do these things that bring you pleasure and joy. Those are bad. We're always taught to be selfless and give everything away and but then that just makes us to where we're always needing and
Yeah.
we're never filled. And so then there's a lot of problems that come from that.
Right. There's a lot of destructive things we can fill up that need with instead.
Mhm.
Oof. Wow. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're very welcome. Thank you for interviewing me.
Before we go, can you tell all the listeners where they can find you on various platforms and social media, and maybe a little bit more about your coaching business?
Yeah, so my coaching business is something that's very new. So for right now, you can just DM me. I'm most active on Instagram. And that's spicy social media that starts with an O. And you can go to elaynalove.com. That's ELAYNALOVE.com. And that will bring you to my link tree. And my link tree will show you all of my links, all of my social medias, and everywhere that you can find me.
And I
And
will be sure to put Elayna's Linktree link into the description as well.
okay. Yeah, and you can also message me right through my website.
Oh, great.
That makes it easy. That's another way. I'm honestly trying to figure out how to keep up with all the DMs. This is just me doing this.
Oh, that's a good sign though, right?
Yeah, but if you message me on Instagram, I usually can see those. That's a little more palatable than some other social medias, or that spicy site that starts with an O. I see those messages.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, everybody go check out Elayna Love's website and the associated accounts if you would like to connect more with her. And thank you so much for being here today. I appreciated getting to hear your story so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Like and subscribe.
Do it.